Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of www.stressfreenow.info. Our featured guest today is Gerry Tucker, speaking about the inspirational messages she shares in her recently released book entitled Bedside Chat, a book of inspiration and meditation. 7 years ago, Gerry began writing Bedside Chat for 100 of her closest friends. Each month, a newsletter filled with inspirational messages would be mailed to her friends. During this time, she also wrote poems for Mahogany Magazine and articles for the Villager newspaper and the Austin American-Statesman newspaper. She has taken the content of the newspapers and articles and created Bedside Chat. Gerry's mission is to, quote, help bring about a profound change for the better in the lives of other souls, to assist them in redefining their goals and objectives, evaluating how to make choices for positive change. God and I, working together, can do this. Whether serving on nonprofit boards, managing human resource problems, writing articles in newspapers, or conducting workshops, Gerry's passion is working with women to achieve their dreams. As a spiritual, career, and life coach, Gerry does individual private coaching, helping individuals tap into their purpose and passion in order to create a more fulfilling life. She graduated with a Juris Doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin, a master's degree from Howard University, and a bachelor's degree from Fisk University. She maintained a private practice for many years. Since that time, she has served as an education administrator specializing in human resources. Gerry is a certified professional career and life coach and enjoys writing and creating the space for individuals to redesign their life through defined goals and taking a spiritual approach to life. Gerry, welcome. Audience, hello.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, Gerry. It's so wonderful to have you, and thank you for being our featured guest today. Audience, you are in for a real treat because Gerry has a wealth of wisdom to share with us. Gerry, your bio tells our audience that you have had a wide range of experience and expertise as an attorney and career coach. What led you to the work that you're currently doing?
Well, Bob, throughout my careers, I found it important to do an assessment of my achievements and my leadership style and how I was being effective in the workplace. And in doing those assessments, I found that it was critical for me to take time out for me, time to breathe, to get centered in my spirit, and to have a sense of who I was. And I realized that many people, not only in the workplace, but in my divorce cases, I found that they are so busy with life and tasks and changes that they neglect themselves. And they neglect integrating the principles of spirituality in their everyday life. And so based upon those experiences, I began to look at what could I contribute as a career coach to helping people slow down and redesign their life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gerry. I think that is so very true in life, that we're not always acknowledging the importance that spirituality plays in life and in career. Gerry, you originally wrote and distributed the ideas contained in your book, Bedside Chat, as newsletter articles to your 100 closest friends. That's a wonderful thing, to have 100 close friends. Can you share with our audience some of the transformative changes that resulted from that high-level form of sharing?
Well, Christine, many of my readers indicated that the newsletter was a new form of communication for them, that the newsletter came at just the right time, and that the articles were pertinent to things that they were going through. And they indicated that after getting them a while, they were better able to manage not only their family life, but their work life. And so the articles provided a chance for them to kind of sit back and relax, take it in, and slow down, and just get in touch with what was happening. And for them, that was a new approach, because most of us are so mental when we think about these things. It required them to go to their spirit and their soul, and to really get in touch with what was happening with them. And so I think the transformation was the shift that they were able to experience in looking at it in a spiritual way rather than a mental way.
Very nice, very nice. Now, During this time with the contact with the newsletter, were you in touch with them individually, or was it just through the newsletter? Did you have personal conversations in addition to that?
Yes. Many of them live in Texas, where I live. Some live in California. Some would call me after reading something that touched them to say, thank you, that was just what I needed. I wanted you to know that. Others I would see around town and would just kind of very quietly, say thank you. I'm getting it. I'm reading it. So there were various forms of communication that I received their feedback.
Great. I think that is so fantastic. Gerry, when we share with others in an authentic way, magic can occur, and certainly your spiritual approach would engender that. Did you and any of your friends experience magical moments from the types of deep reflective experiences which your bedside chat generated?
Christine, I'll share with you that writing the newsletter really was a new experience for me because I decided that I was going to let the Spirit guide me. And so taking the time to really listen and write articles from my heart was different. Typically, when you sit down to write, you have a theme and you want to convey a message and, you decide how to get that across to your audience. But for this assignment, I decided that I would really let the Spirit guide me. And hopefully that Spirit would touch others who were in need of whatever the message was that I was trying to convey. And so for me, it was a new experience and a revelation. And for my readers, they confirmed that getting a spiritual message versus a religious message was different for them. They could identify with it because it was simply talking about what can we do differently to live a better life. And it doesn't mean you have to be religious or you have to read the Bible every day. It just means you have to enjoy life and know your values and how you can live a better life by doing small things. And so for my readers, I did get feedback that it was a different experience and a different form of communication.
That is so lovely. When you were speaking, one thing you said really caught my attention, that the writing for you was a spiritual experience. We've had authors on our show before, and they've shared their writing process. Could you speak a little bit more about the way that this particular writing was different for you, that it being a spiritual experience for you?
Well, Christine, my philosophy is that when you're spiritual and you're in touch with the universe, you get assignments. We don't always like the assignments we get, nor do we hear them all the time. But for me, this newsletter was an assignment that I received one night late at night. I was reading, and my quiet voice said, you need to communicate with your friends the principles of spirituality so that they can enjoy life better. And of course, initially I was a little hesitant. When we hear that voice, we're not sure whether it's, the voice or whether it's us making a decision. So that it came at me differently. It wasn't something I decided to do. It was something my heart said, you need to do this because somebody needs to hear the message that we need to send. And so that started me on that path of knowing that this was not about me. It was about getting in touch with what others might need to hear or want to hear that would make their life better. And so what I would do at night is I would spend a good 30 minutes just meditating, getting in touch with myself, getting rid of the negative things that have happened during that day. Sometimes I do candles and incense just to get quiet with my spirit. And then I'd say, I'm ready to write the newsletter. What messages do we need to put into this one? And once I got that, I could begin to write. But if I didn't get that, I had a real difficult time trying to come up with things to write. And so over time, I learned there is timing. There's perfect timing. And when you find that timing, go with it. And if it's not the right time, just wait.
Gerry, thank you so much for sharing your process. It brings a smile to my face listening to your story. I want to thank you, and listeners, we'll continue in a moment. We'll be back on Learn to Live Stress-Free. Dr. Bob and I are speaking with Gerry Tucker.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free. Dr. Bob and I are speaking with Jerry Tucker about her new book, Bedside Chat.
Hi, Jerry. I just wanted to continue on something that came up during the first segment of our show, and I know our listeners would love to know the answers to your secret. And your secret is, how do you manage to have 100 closest friends? I mean, everybody's like, "Ooh, 100 close friends," that are close. How did you manage that?
When I began to compile the listing, I started with my church, friends from church. Then I added people from work. Then I added people in the nonprofits that I work with. And so I think we narrowed the focus in terms of who we're interacting with. And so I just broadened the scope and said, any life that I have touched and that I have interacted with and connected with, it's important for them to be in this network. And so that's how I was able to get 100. And I can tell you it's probably more than 100 because it grew. People would send me names from all across the country to add to the list, people I did not know. So by the time we finished, after the first couple of years, we had a listing of 300 people that we would send the newsletter to. But I first decided to look at in the areas that I operate in, and I was easily able to come up with 100 people.
Great. I love that story. And people in terms of marketing always talk about, how many people do you have in your list, et cetera. But what's being discovered, more important than the number of people you have on the list, is the quality of your list in terms of how engaged those people are. So when you would send your newsletter, are they opening your email, and then are they reading the material? And then, of course, as you've mentioned, they're giving you feedback. So that is what everybody who is out in the marketplace writing, and I just have to say, what you talked about, your centering process, that's the term that I would use, that to get to that quiet place of self-care. And I love how you said that getting in that right spirit leads to the perfect timing. And I know in my own writing process, I go through that I spend a lot of time trying to get to the title of an article or for the book, and then it's almost as if when I get that just right, and that may take some time, but when it lines up, it's almost like the handle on the slot machine goes down, and then the article or whatever I'm doing kind of writes itself.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like it's very similar to the process that you described here. So, Jerry, let me ask you this. You have a tremendous amount of experience in the nonprofit arena. Can you tell our listeners how you employ your inspirational concepts in that arena?
Well, working with nonprofits on their boards and commissions, you have a lot of people who are there to help strategize and to come up with strategic plans. So they're very thoughtful and considerate about where the organization should go. And I think one of the things I tried to attempt to do was to inspire them to use their intuition more in their work. And that is, sometimes we would seek funds and it would be with the wrong partner. It wasn't a good match, or we didn't get a good feel after we talked with their boards or their executive director, and we'd go full steam ahead to try to get the resources, the funding that was available, only to find out that our mission and our goals were not the same. And so I tried to get them to slow down, to really get to know the people that they were going to have a relationship with and decide if there was common values, common goals, common dreams about where the organization should go. And at first it was difficult because everybody wanted to make the decisions and move on. But eventually we were able to slow down and be very thoughtful and use our intuition more in terms of identifying which of those relationships were worth the partnerships. And I also tried to get them to understand that, time is money, but time is also experience. And they needed to take the time to learn our community, to learn what our clients wanted. And if they took the time to do that, they could provide better services. We would come up with goals and a mission and things that we wanted to do for the community, but it was not with the community. And so hopefully I was able to facilitate them slowing down to really go out into the community and find out what was needed. And then lastly, in the workplace, I try to tell people that there is a time for everything. There is a season. And there are also right people for the right kinds of jobs. And too often we're so busy and in a time crunch to make things happen that we really don't find the right person for the right job. I tried to get them to look at the gifts and talents that people brought to the table and how those could be used for the organization to grow and develop, and to slow down and to use their intuition to make sure it felt like a good match. And I think over time people begin to adopt those principles, that it doesn't have to be a strategic approach to everything, that sometimes you do your strategic approach and then you sit back and say, now, does that feel right? Does that look right? Is this the best thing for what we want to do? And I think that's probably the greatest contributions I could make being on the boards and commissions.
Wow, Gerry, I can't tell you, I'm loving it. I know our audience is loving that. You're talking about bringing to the fore something that many C-suite level people have known, but they don't use the word. So, for example, you use the word intuition. A business CEO might say, my gut instinct, but by you saying intuition, I think that is so beautiful, because what you spoke so eloquently about is how to align intuition with the intellect so that it correlates with the beliefs and values. And when you mentioned that in terms of going into the community, in terms of doing service, I think one of the things that, from my own experience, what I've seen is that, sometime as I'll just put unquote do-gooder, we see something, we see a problem, and we look at it and we say, and then we say, I know the fix, and try to rush in. And I think a key thing that you were saying in your answer was to slow down, to not be so fast. When you were talking, Gerry, I said, Gerry is the voice of reason and wisdom. So I thought that is very, very poignant, because there are so many examples where, people who want to do good, they see a situation, and the surface short-term solution is not the answer, because it's only dealing with symptoms, not causation. And I think that's your answer speaks to that, because certainly in many communities there is a spiritual answer that's required for it to be fixed.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Bob.
Great. So, Gerry, your ideas and concepts have appeared in your local newspaper. Would you share with our audience the type of audience feedback you've received from your readers?
Sure, Bob. For the newspapers, I usually write about spirituality in the workplace. And in fact, I just had an article in our local newspaper last week that talked about how to help your employees thrive using spirituality in the workplace. And typically what I attempt to do is help my readers understand the principles of spirituality and how you can use spirituality as a tool to connect people in the workplace. And I try to give them a different perspective that they might not have considered before in terms of how to really connect that and to make that integration in the workplace. And in the recent article, I really talked about how we as managers and supervisors need to understand the gifts and talents that people have, not just what their skills are, but what are the gifts and talents that they want to use to help other people. And if you can emphasize those in the workplace, you're adding to the happiness of that employee because they're able to give back. And so I try to integrate spirituality into work without it being religious, but with it being sensitive to people growing and developing within the workplace.
Again, Gerry, I'm so enjoying listening to your message, as I know our audience is, and certainly your touting spirituality in the workplace, I think, can only help people to thrive and to feel revitalized when we nourish that aspect of our nature. In, our opinion, that can only bring good things. Gerry, your bio indicates that you've also written and published poetry. What are some of the main themes that run through your poems?
I think there are three themes that I try to incorporate in my poetry and my writings. The first would be managing transition. Transition is just a fact of life. No one gets away from it. At some point in life, we're going to have a transition. And with transition, I try to help my readers understand that if you make it a natural process and you understand the process and can see it operating in your life, you can be more effective. And in transition, it's just so important to create that space for you to be able to understand what's going on around you, what's going on internally, and not react to it, but to be still and to wait for the shift to occur so that you can move on with your life. And so that's one of the biggest themes that I try to keep in most of what I do. The other is career management, helping people to understand that managing their career is managing their life. They can't have someone else do that for them. And how you go about doing that will make the difference between being successful and not happy. And I guess the last is just trying to get people to understand and to integrate spirituality as part of their life, not just a practice or something you do, but something you live, because you can feel it and it's integrated into everything that you do. And so those are probably the three themes that run throughout most of my writings.
Gerry, I just have to tell you, I am just enthralled with your answers. In particular, what struck me when you talked about transition management, it reminded me of a phrase that someone said to me a long time ago, and now I use it in my talks. And they go, if you live long enough, this is going to happen to you. Right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's great that you mentioned transitions, and in particular, it syncs well, that kind of thinking, with the work that Christine and I do, because we both use what would be called hypoarousal techniques, which help to create a still point. And so whether we're talking about hypnosis, whether we're talking about NLP, whether we're talking about coaching, anything, and in fact, the issue that you also raised about creating space, and when I do open focus with clients, that is the whole issue, that is to create the space in which change occurs. Dr. Milton Erickson talked about that, that change happens at that place of when things are neutral from the standpoint of physics, that is known as a chaotic attractor. So, Gerry, I want to thank you so very much for being our featured guest today, and I know our listeners have enjoyed the wisdom you've shared with them.
Well, thank you for having me, Bob.
Gerry, again, we appreciate you being here with us today and inviting our audience to get in touch with their spiritual nature. Gerry, how can listeners get in touch with you and learn more about the work that you're doing?
If they'd like to email me, Christine, they can email me at spiritworks48@gmail.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So, listeners, you can check in with Gerry at Spirit, SPIRIT, works, WORKS, 48 at gmail.com. Gerry, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Christine and Bob.
Gerry, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
I would like to share with your listeners that they really have more control than they think they have about how to have a better life. And if they will take the time to explore what works for them, spirituality is real and can help them integrate their being with their goals, their dreams, and they can make it happen in a timely manner. And I wish them all well on their journey.
Wonderful, Gerry. I want to thank you for that. I love your message of people taking personal responsibility and learning how to shift the locus of control to a place of transformation that is helpful to them. So I want to thank you again, Gerry, for being our featured guest today, and I want to thank our audience for listening wherever you are and whatever time zone you're in right now. We appreciate your presence and trust that you'll benefit in some way from the information delivered during today's show. We welcome and look forward to receiving your comments about our show. Please let us know if there are additional topics you'd like us to cover or a guest you enjoyed whom you'd like us to invite back. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how to get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. That's 954-900-2179. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of www.stressfreenow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.